But yeah, really warm welcome to you all for this panel. We've got a great selection of speakers who we're going to be speaking to very shortly, representing innovators, investors, fleet operators, disruptors in the e-mobility space. We're going to be talking about the EV transition, what's been driving it, and what we can expect. It's a really dynamic topic, never been more timely. I mean, I work for an organisation, I should say, called Climate Group. We lead an initiative called EV100. It's a network of about 110 global companies, including Abbey at Openreach, who are committed to decarbonising their vehicle fleets by set deadlines. As a climate NGO, we're focused on driving climate action fast. So this is a really pertinent topic. EVs are a really significant way to drive down carbon emissions. The talk of the town over the last few days has been the heat in London, unprecedented temperatures. And I was at an event yesterday where the deputy mayor of London was talking about the floods a couple of nights ago, the storms a couple of nights ago. There was 400 call-outs for fire engines to deal with flash floods across London. One little small example of the impacts of climate change upon us already. But obviously, this is not just a climate issue. It's an economic issue. It's about jobs. It's about industrial competitiveness. It's about lots of other elements, clean air, health. So it's a really, really pertinent topic. And if we will talk a bit about the UK, focus a bit on the UK today, and obviously a new government. We've got not new government, but a new prime minister. What's going to be his ambition around electric vehicles and the EV transition? So it's really important that we keep on the path we're on in the UK. There's been some really strong progress, which we're going to dig into in the panel discussion. But the Climate Change Committee report came out this morning talking about how we need to stick to the zero-emission vehicle mandate, but also charging infrastructure need to see continued investment in that. So we need to see a continued progress. But there are headwinds. There's a lot of pressure to slow things down, but that's the wrong direction, not just, as I said, for climate, but for lots of other reasons. So I think the point in this EV transition, it's not whether the technology is right. I've been in this space for 10 years or so, talking about EVs and transport. It was very much an if 10 years ago. Now it's not an if. It's a how fast and how far are we going to go with this transition. So we're going to have quite a practical discussion around what has been the progress we've seen over the last 10 years or so, but also where are we now and what can we see coming up during this very exciting time. So with that, I'm going to turn to my panelists. If I've not given you full introductions, but if it's okay by you, as I ask you a question, if you wouldn't mind just saying a few words of introduction about you and your organisation, so the audience know who you're speaking to. But to kick off with you, Abby, just got my. Openreach, Openreach, second largest van fleet in the country. So you've been on this journey for a long time, one of the largest fleet operators. So from your perspective, what's changed most over the last few years, and how's your business kind of been managing that change?
Okay. I think our fleet team would say we're the biggest wrecked fleet in the country because we are competitive. For anyone who's wondering who the biggest fleet is, it's Royal Mail, because that is always the first question. But yeah, we have been doing this since the COP in Glasgow, 2019, where we signed up to zero emissions by 2030. So for us, technically, that's March 2031, financial year end. And I think the biggest change, we have reduced the size of our fleet. We're up to 7,000 EVs. But the biggest change is that it's gone from being the shit van to the quite sexy van. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear, but it is. They were rubbish and nobody wanted them. And now we don't talk about climate. We don't talk about net zero. We let the engineers talk for themselves. They are loving the 4D Transit and they just want to get behind the wheel. So that has been a massive shift that they just kind of infect each other. And it's almost never about carbon. It's about Apple Play. It's about a nicer drive. It's about being able to warm up the cab from an app on your phone before you get in on a cold day. It's all of the little gizmos that make it a really nice thing to do. So that's on the kind of behavioural side of it. But on a business level, better range, cheaper, better availabilities, choice, it's all emerging so quickly. So it is just a much better business picture for us.
Yeah, it's a better product, which sometimes was overlooked a while ago, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, just simply better products. So turning to you, Ollie, from Octopus EV, you've been in this space for a long time as well, in the leasing side, as well as now with Octopus EV, which is a large part of your business. But What would you say the most significant changes you've seen over the last 5 years from your current vantage point with your current company, but also your last role?
No, thanks, Dominic. Let's just introduce myself briefly as well. So my name's Ollie Boots. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Octopus Electric Vehicles. For those people who are based in the UK, you've probably heard of the Octopus Energy brand now. So we started as an energy retailer. Most people know us as an energy retailer, but there's lots of other things that we do across that. So I'm one of the directors of Octopus Electric Vehicles. So we help people get into an electric car. So that's provide the car through a lease. We provide the energy. We provide all the support they need to get into that. So yeah, I mean, I was actually working it out. The guys asked me to write a brief or an overview of myself to go on the website for this, and I counted I've done this for 20 years, which is hopefully I don't look old enough. But yeah, I remember driving the first Nissan Leaf. I was working for a business in London, and the first thing you think was, it's amazed by the silence of it, and then everyone looks at the range. But I think those days are gone. So to answer your question, so as I said, we started really about 5 years ago as Octopus Electric Vehicles, putting cars out on the road. We're now at 50,000 cars, and as Octopus EV, we're about 7% of all EV registrations in the UK are registered by us. So to answer your question, why is that switch changing? Well, it's actually quite similar to what Abby said. Like the first thing that for a consumer, so we do both consumer leasing and salary sacrifice leasing. The most important thing for most people is the cost is lower. So it's cheaper to buy or lease or use through salary sacrifice. And then it's miles cheaper to run, especially at the moment with the heightened cost of diesel and petrol. But if you're charging at home, it's 2-3p a mile in an EV. If you're using petrol diesel, it's 30-40p at the moment, which is a massive difference. So you've got cost. The second thing really is they're great cars. To the same as your engineers, the same as consumers, right? Joking about warming the car, I definitely pre-cooled my EV before I got in it this morning and left it running while I then grabbed the kids and everything else running. I left the air conditioning running, but without any engine noise on. So they're great cars. We find that we've done various surveys, and there's 93% of people say they'd never go back to a night. So once they've had an EV, they're never going to go back. They've got over that hurdle. And the third thing, there are some people, but it actually sadly isn't the majority of reasons. Some people take them because they're doing the right thing for the planet. And they want to have that reduced emissions. But that generally is the third reason. It's about cost, it's about experience, and then it becomes into reducing emissions.
Yeah, definitely echo that. I had a Nissan Leaf. I was just saying to you earlier, unfortunately, it got stolen a couple of months ago, but it was an environmental choice. I think when I bought that 8-9 years ago, the range wasn't great. It wasn't long enough to get me up to Yorkshire.
Nobody would have nicked it a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm surprised they nicked it now. Did you leave it open?
I don't know. No, I didn't. But no, it was slightly an environmental choice. But now it's a better consumer proposition. I think we get into the kind of the scale where everybody knows somebody who's driven an EV, and you can see they're simply a better product. But we do need to move through different vehicle segments. We're talking about passenger cars now, and then vans are coming as well. Well, there is issues across. How do we make sure that every vehicle on the road, from cars up to vans and heavy goods vehicles, electrify? So there's a long way to go. But turning to you, Neil, I mean, we are lucky to have so many people with such long experience in this space as well. You've been around in this space, around the EV space, for quite a long time from an innovation perspective. But I just wonder if you can talk to that overarching kind of theme we're circling around. Do you see that EVs are becoming mainstream, and what's your perspective?
Hopefully the mic's working. Yeah, thank you for the introduction there. Neil Whittaker, I'm an associate at Eigen Ventures, and as you said earlier, I've had over 15 years in the EV space, working with innovators, building cars, building batteries, inverters, all of the hardware tech which goes into these vehicles, and working with enthusiasts in the first instance who are adopting them and bringing them to life. I think the one key theme that my colleagues have mentioned here is about behaviours. I've got a background in the last few years, particularly in the heavy goods sector. And in the heavy goods sector, when EVs have come into that environment, the drivers have really embraced them. The comments which have come back to me is that they're far easier to drive, they're more comfortable to drive. We've had operators who have driven the vehicle so that they can test what the range is, so that they drive it flat, basically, to determine that and give themselves the confidence for it. So what I've seen over that sort of 15-year journey is the migration and adoption in the passenger car market, which I think is now embedding and moving quite rapidly forward, and people are confident of taking an EV and being able to use it from a number of different use cases. So from my perspective, a passenger car market is mainstream, and it's very commercial as well today. When we look at vans, I think it's a little bit stickier, largely around load carrying capacity. It works on certain routes, but it won't work on other routes. So that investment in longer range vehicles that take more load to come forward. In the HGV sector, we're very much at the early adopter stage. Somewhere in the order of 500. I think SMMT report for last year said there was just over 500 HGVs registered in the UK. Talking to the OEMs, there's around about 1,100 pre-sold HGVs for this year. So it is moving up, but the total market in the UK is around about 20,000 HGVs every year. So you can see it's still very much a small percentage, but it is the transition. Electric is the way to go, and there are known constraints that some of my colleagues have touched on, and I'm sure we'll touch on later as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Neil. Yeah, you're right. There's a long way to go, but I think, as you say, the destination is clear. Fully electric is the destination. It's still how we exactly get there is to be debated, and we'll come on to that in discussions later. But again, Sylviane, turning to you. Yeah, it was fascinating in the briefing call we had before, learning about you're right at the kind of starting point when EVs kind of became a viable technology. Not only witnessing it, you were part of it with Formula E and founding it and setting it up. And obviously then that technology is proven in that motorsport space, and it then filters into the consumer space. But I just wondered if you could share a little bit of your perspective back then and how much things have changed. In terms of the technology as well, specifically, how's the technology kind of advanced?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Sylvain Philippi, Managing Director and CTO at Envision Racing. I'll start with playing top trumps with Ollie. So my first EV was a Think City. I don't know if you remember what that was.
No, I don't know what that is. Oh, I thought you were going to say a G-Wiz or something.
No, Think City. It was a Norwegian car made in partnership with Ford, and it had a hot battery chemistry, which means you had to leave it plugged in. Otherwise, after 3 days, the battery would be depleted. So Google it, Think City, and we tried to make a race car out of it. I'll show you some funny pictures. So when I drove the first Nissan Leaf, it was a big step up compared to the Think City but then I got lucky to drive one of the very first Tesla Roadsters in the UK, and on track as well. And that's really when I got this kind of wow moment on what the technology can do in terms of power and feeling. And I've spent my life the last 15 years working on this ever since. So yeah, I mean, it is obvious how much the technology has advanced, right? But I am lucky to have seen it at the very beginning. And when I see what we can do now with race cars and the latest road cars, it's just incredible, really. And as you say, most people that don't drive an EV is because they don't really understand or haven't, not really a problem, but they haven't been exposed to what these cars can really do. They are living on preconceptions rather than reality. That's very clear. So yeah, when we started Formula E, our team was one of the founding teams. The race cars, to do a race of 45 minutes, we needed 2 cars per driver. So the energy density was so low that one car could only do 25 minutes flat out, which is kind of normal at the time. That was 2014, 2015. So the drivers had to go in their car A, do 25 minutes, come back into the garage, literally jump out of car A, jump in car B, and finish the race. 4 years later, obviously during that time in parallel to racing, we developed the next generation car every 2 years. 4 years later, we could do the same duration, 45 minutes, at a much higher speed with only one car. So that was a big step. Fast forward 4 years later to the Gen 3 generation, we could obviously need only one car, same duration, but much, much higher speed and much lower weight. We're similar weight to Formula 1 cars, including the battery, which people said was impossible 5 years before, and we did it. And we kept on developing that car. Fast forward to now, when literally next week we're testing the brand new car, the Gen 4 Formula E car, which is an absolutely incredible machine. So the headline statistics was 0 to 60 miles an hour in 1.7 seconds, which is a lot faster than Formula 1. Top speed of 335 kph, so 210 miles an hour. and 700 kilowatt regen. Normal car is 100, 150. So 700 kilowatt regen, it's the equivalent of slamming the brakes on your road car. 600 kilowatt power, which is 820 horsepower. And what is really incredible is system efficiency from the battery DC bus to the wheel. So battery, inverter, motor, gearbox, diff, drive shaft, wheel. Efficiency of 97%. That compares to an IC engine car is about 25%, and a good electric road car is about 85%. We are at 97%. Through the hardware we use, super high voltage, we run the cars at 950 volts, a lot of fancy technologies. But that just shows how incredible the tech in this car is. And it's only a matter of time before it goes down to road cars. I mean, my car I just picked up a few weeks ago is on the new 800 volt architecture that all the new EVs are based on. And that was pioneered by Formula E. We started that 7 years ago. There was no supply chain. No one made inverters and motors at 800 volt for 300 kilowatt. That did not exist. So we had to make all of this ourselves. And then it got picked up by the big tier 1 suppliers who are now working with the manufacturers. So the kind of track to road is absolutely alive in Formula E. The same way it was in Formula 1 in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It is now 100% happening in Formula E. And it's really exciting.
Oh, thanks, Irvin. That's fascinating. And it just seems like they're going to be just a superior vehicle. Again, that point about as a consumer experience, but also just as a performance vehicle, outperforming Formula 1, I guess. So they can't compete in the loud noise they're making, but that doesn't define motorsport. Hopefully people just see the superiority of Formula E. So kind of just, I don't know if you can respond to that. Do you see it disrupting Formula 1 as a sport just for the superiority of the vehicles? But then also you talked about the battery technology and in Formula E, which is then permeated into the consumer market. I wonder if you could give a flavour of any other kind of technological advances that you see at the moment that we might see over the coming years.
Yeah, the beauty of Formula E and Formula 1 is that even though we are owned by the same people and we are governed by the same governing body, we have very different roadmap. So Formula 1 is hybrid and actually are looking at getting more back into the petrol side. Formula E has an exclusive license to be the electric championship within the FIA. So our goal is very clear, is to make these cars as fast and exciting as possible. F1 is a little bit more political and they have a few more stakeholders. But for example, here, literally, we are sitting on the track when we are racing in mid-August. Our last race of this season of Formula E will be mid-August here, and literally the start-finish straight is at Excel. Things that you cannot do in Formula 1, but you can do in Formula E. So yeah, in terms of technology, it's battery energy density and power density, very important. So 10 years ago, you had to choose whether you wanted a chemistry that gives you as much energy as possible, but the power density was very low, both on charging and power. Now, the latest chemistries allow you to do both, no problem. And it's a virtuous cycle because once you increase the amount of energy, then the C rate gets easier. So the more energy you have, the more easy it is to get the power. High voltage, as I talked about. And then the software side is very important. So in Formula E, we are not allowed to change the hardware of the car for the season. So the car starts race 1 and finishing race 20. It's the exact same hardware, but the software is unlimited. And we find a lot of performance on the software, both on the energy efficiency, so how we manage the current from the inverter to the motor, but also on the vehicle dynamics, which is what you guys haven't seen on the road yet. But what we can do with our cars is absolutely incredible in terms of like managing the balance of the car, understeer, oversteer. So there's a future market for sports cars and performance vehicles that will make electric performance vehicles so far superior to the very best sports petrol cars. And that will have a halo effect, which is something that's also needed. It's all well and good to have the kind of day-to-day cars that are super efficient, cheap to run, reliable, nice to drive, all good. That's needed. But you also need the halo card.
Yeah.
And you'll get these really amazing sports cars, electric, that can do incredible things. And that will be direct Formula E technology going into these cars. So watch this space. In the next few years, there's going to be some really cool products coming to market.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee. And I see you want to come in, Neil.
Yeah, just very quickly. I had the great pleasure of being involved with Williams Advanced Engineering in the first generation of vehicles. I'm old enough to have got mature kids who were into Formula One, but didn't find it attractive when it was purely a motorsport. Now that there's Formula E, they've got back into motorsport through Formula E. So to answer your question, has Formula One got a future? I'm open-minded on that particular point at the moment, because the next generation coming through are really buying into Formula E. The engagement that they get from it, the enthusiasm they have for it, they're very much focused on the outputs of it, not the tech. And as I can see it, there's a real challenge coming forward for Formula One.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. It's just that sign, isn't it? It's a great climate solution, but this is just it's not operating on that plane. It's just a better product. So we've moved into this kind of innovation section of discussion. To turn back to you, Ollie, around this kind of innovation. I know you had a few announcements on Octopus EV earlier this week about some kind of innovations you're bringing to the UK. There's other bits like vehicle to grid, which you might want to explain a little bit more. But there's also kind of the way that you're innovating a bit with business models a bit as well, and the user interface. It's not always the kind of really exciting kind of the product. It's making it easier, make it usable. So I don't know if you could talk a bit about the innovations in your working with your customers, as well as some of the technological innovations you're kind of bringing to market.
Thanks. I mean, there's loads I could talk about across the Octopus Energy group of various spaces that we're innovating, but I guess sticking into the transport space. So we've been doing vehicle to grid, which is a jargon that people talk about all the time. It basically means taking power from the car and putting it back to the grid, in simple terms. We had our first trial of that back in 2020, actually. It was a Nissan Leafs on a CHAdeMO connector, which is jargon for an old-fashioned type of connection to the grid, which I think your car had on. But so we had 140 of those cars. They've been out, they've come back, they've done their trial, they're successful. We also now have live in, I guess, real world cars that are out with BYD. It's a BYD Dolphin. So we lease these cars along with the tech, which enables those cars to switch on and switch off. We tell them when to switch on charging, when to switch off charging. And there's about a dozen other manufacturers that we have in the pipeline. It's a bit of a pain going through some of the compliance to get that turned on. So to be able to work with it's called the DNO, but the direct network operator, the people that actually run the grid. So vehicle to grid is coming, and it will come at volumes. At the moment, the technology that is more at scale is what we call internally V1G, but it basically is telling the car when to turn on and off for charging overnight. So it's in market, we call it Intelligent Octopus Go. So are there any EV drivers in the audience? Let's see if anyone's still listening as well. These headphones are working. There's not many, but thank you for putting your hands up. Is anyone on Intelligent Octopus Go? Normally I get a few. If you're not, we can chat later. If you are, basically what that does is it turns the battery on and off. So if it's really windy, there's lots of energy in the grid overnight. We say, hey, turn this car off. And all of those batteries combined, sorry, if it's really windy, we say turn the car on. That creates a virtual power plant. So we can share that. So two sorts of technology. Vehicle 1G, turning them on and off, and then vehicle 2G when it can come into the grid as well. So that's all great and it's interesting. I guess, why is it important? As the grid moves more and more into electro tech, so more people have EVs, more people will have heat pumps, more people have solar, and they are running their houses, running their businesses on electric tech. The grid will need investment. So in the UK, in the EU, it will need investments. Now, we'll need to build the grid to the peak, because obviously that's the maximum it needs to get to. Traditionally, the peak is between kind of 5 and 7 p.m. when everyone gets home. Last night, it would have been halfway through the football when everyone made a cup of tea at whatever that was, 9:45. So building the grid to meet the peaks, if we can smooth those peaks out, so we can make sure that the peak's not as high, we don't need to build as much of the grid. So in simple terms, if we can get vehicle to grid working at scale, actually that means we can take power out of the grid when it's at its cheapest and when it's there's lots of it. And then when we get to those peak moments between 5 and 7 p.m. or when there's an England football game on, we can then smooth the grid out. We don't need as much investment in it. So vehicle to grid today is really at its infancy. But it will be coming at scale. I think it's a fascinating technology. The other bits that we announced this week, which we might end up coming to later, Dominic, to your question. So as drama of headphone. This week we announced home battery storage. So Octopus will be launching its own home energy storage, which again is the same thing as vehicle to grid. So all we're really doing in vehicle to grid is using the car as a battery. And then the other thing, which I think we're going to talk about vans and commercial vehicles later, but we will be bringing battery swapping technology for HGVs to the UK. In a partnership with CATL, but we can talk about that later on, I think, when we get onto commercial vehicles and how that technology is evolving.
Yeah. So some really exciting developments coming down the line. Yeah, as I said, we'll come to that. Just a final one on innovation, which to you, Neil, but maybe you want to come in as well, Abby. But just anything you have to add, Neil. I mean, you've been in the innovation space for a long time. You've seen a lot of these kind of ideas now materialize. Anything exciting you want to share with the audience on what you can see coming around the corner, maybe even in the heavy goods space? Or
I think to that journey, at the Energy System Catapult, working with Eigenventures, we used to look at what the innovation challenges are. So there's a lot of good things that we've talked about a moment ago, which are already in play and coming through. But what are the barriers that we still need to address? And that leads me in particularly in the HGV and the van market to talk about high voltage direct grid connection systems where you can connect directly onto the 11 kV network. You can probably take out 50% of the capital cost of a new installation for a depot charging facility with direct connections. So that's an interesting space to explore. The other one was around about second life batteries, because what we will be looking at is DC microgrid more and more over the next few years, where people are using batteries to balance, and cars are a battery, of course, but equally second life batteries from vehicles can be reconfigured to be used as a balancing mechanism, so that offsets the cost of reinforcement in the grid network as well. And there's a lot of data that we haven't talked about specifically, but being able to charge when the carbon intensity is at its lowest rather than at its highest will become a major factor as well. So looking at what the innovation challenges are, there's three things there that I would suggest are areas which are being explored today by enthusiasts. So the very early adoptive businesses that I would see coming through over the next 3 to 4 years, and resolving some of the challenges that the transition is creating for us.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Really important points highlighted there. So, Abby, I wanted to turn slightly change of pace. We talked about these innovations coming to market, and feel free to. I don't know if you have any comments. Feel free to add any comments on that as well. But more pivoting to thinking about what's the opportunity is. In my opening words, I talked about the climate, but from your business perspective, can you talk to there's industrial competitiveness? How is it supporting UK PLC or in this country? But we are in the midst of a global transition. It's an important point to stress. Markets like Vietnam and Ethiopia and other markets are really pressing ahead and seeing a very industrial case for this. So and I guess also from your perspective, you're in a sustainability role, not just transport as well. So you're across the whole organisation, and how does this kind of disruption fit with the economics and broader sustainability agenda?
It's a lot of questions, isn't it? I think the first thing to say is that vehicle to grid technology is one of the most exciting things. And back in May, the Climate Change Committee launched the Well Adapted UK report, which is their fourth report to the government on what we need to do to be adapted to climate by 2050. Telecoms was included for the first time. And there is a recommendation. It's a recommendation, not a guide, target, but that's what we're grappling with, which is by 2050, there should be no outages to telecoms due to climate. So high winds, storms, floods, waves, you can't lose service. And that involves us. We are entirely dependent on power. So that involves us having power continuity. We've got a big man fleet. We've got power that move around the country to give us battery backup. Then suddenly that is a game changer. That makes that actually realistically achievable. So the resilience part of it is absolutely huge. To the economics of it, I mean, a 9% delta in cost, it is cheaper, significantly cheaper to run an EV fleet today. So thanks the Donald for that. I think that's a massive benefit that we're realizing at the moment. And the adoption is very quick. So I don't know how many of you have got one of those solar nerds. It's usually a guy who's got an app and he's got solar on his house, and he will tell you how much his house is generating in the last hour and how cheap his journey to the station was this morning. And that word of mouth is a complete game changer, because they're not doing it on climate. They're doing it on cost and sort of nerdy technology, and isn't this absolutely brilliant? But at a business scale, at an enterprise scale, that makes us competitive. That makes us, my CFO loves it. We're reducing cost. And then to the competitiveness part of it, for those of you who are in sustainability, you will probably make this business case until you go hoarse. But the business's ability to raise capital, to win business, to impress your investors, depends on you having a carbon reduction plan that is credible. For businesses the size of ours, you've got to have a science-based target. And this is the way through. This is how we do it. So we impress upon all of our subcontractors that if we win more business through government contracts or through customers, then we pass on more business. So they need to go on that journey with us. They're not all entirely convinced. That is the sort of one of the biggest challenges. But the more we can do this, the more we can go and get those government contracts which have that baked in as a clause. So it helps.
Great. So obviously we talk a lot about that business case, and it wasn't necessarily there for owning an electric vehicle or van, but it's coming on quickly. But it's kind of from a obviously Octopus EV is growing very quickly as a business, but maybe to you, Ollie, how do you see that kind of the market opportunity that's opening up? This is for EV uptake, but how is this presenting an economic opportunity for businesses like yours?
I think there's probably for all businesses, there's an opportunity for growth with EVs, but also with various other net zero initiatives as well. I guess quick plug for us. The primary part of what we do is salary sacrifice. If you are using those vehicles in your business, or even for the commute to your business, you can then count the reduction in emissions as part of your report, which is what Abby's talking about. I mean, for us, it's a huge shift in. We set up to disrupt the automotive space. Like, not many people enjoy going to a dealer. So you've kind of got these various trends in automotive. You've got this switch from ICE to EV, internal combustion engine to EV. You've got this switch from ownership to usership, so people are now using cars. And you've got this switch from offline to online, so people going to a dealer, as I was just talking about. So there's opportunities for new business, new innovation in there. Abby briefly mentioned ZEV earlier on, but there's which is a zero emission. There's so many of these jargons. The zero emission vehicle mandate, and actually that I think one of the last announcements Starmer made before resigning was actually that they are going to open that up again, which we think is frustrating, because to your question, Dominic, about investment, well, actually, people need certainty, whether they're a consumer or a business. If especially they're going to make capital investments, then we need certainty about what that's going to be for. So there are definitely opportunities, but we need certainty from government to be able to make those investments, whether that's in helping people make the switch, whether that's in charge point operations, whether it's in grid, whether it's in various different things. But without that government guidance, without that government certainty, it's very hard to make those investments. So I think there are many. There's a recent report by I forgot what the automotive group, which is going to come to me in 1 second, about the level of investment, the level of opportunity actually that the switch to green transport is creating. And I've desperately now forgotten the name of the company. It's going to bug me. But there's a significant investment as people move across. But actually, I think it's also indirect as well in all the other jobs that sit around them.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. We hear that a lot from our members. This regulatory certainty kind of underpins everything. Already invested a lot, want to continue to invest, you need the regulatory certainty in order to do that. ZEV mandate, a big, really key way to do that. So, Sylvia, you talked about, formerly the disruption there, and obviously now the technology is clearly has a superiority. So that's obviously a new market as a sport, but also from an envision point of view, we talked a bit about kind of battery manufacturing. I believe you have a facility or investing in a facility in the Northeast. So this is what we need as well. We need the technology. I say UK needs this. So I just wonder if you could share a little bit about that, and also what do you see the role or the potential for UK in terms of industrial competitiveness through the EV transition?
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. Before I go to that, so my staff absolutely love Octopus EV and actually use it as a talent attraction. So at Silverstone, we have 6, we're going to have 12 chargers, and people can charge for free. So they rent, salary sacrifice an EV for very cheap, and then they come to the factory and charge for free. Brilliant.
Thanks, Phil. I didn't even set you up for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much.
No, but I like this. Really, it's an example of UK business that really works. So I really like that. On your question, several aspects. So yeah, Envision Racing, we are one of the few teams that are not car manufacturers, but we do everything else. So we are obviously the leading wind turbine manufacturer. We are the largest green tech company in the world, so fully integrated. The other one is Tesla, actually. But they start from the car all the way to the battery. We make everything but the car. So we create the energy, we store it with the batteries, we distribute it on the grid, we make the chargers, we just don't do the car. So the racing car symbolizes that in the chain. So yes, if you see any Nissan electric cars on the road, they have Envision batteries, Envision ESC made in Sunderland. The factory has been there for many, many years, but we have just finished the brand new one, which is the latest standard and latest technology of ASC gigafactories, exactly the same as the one in Douai in the north of France, next to the iconic Renault factory. So all the Renault 5 and Renault 4 you see on the road have Envision batteries also, Envision ASC batteries. So it's a very large business. But interestingly enough, another very lucrative and growing part of the business is batteries for static storage for grid, exactly as you talked about. So we have an office in London for Envision Energy that is selling a lot of very large deals in the UK, in France, in America, in India, all over the place. Very large deals to store renewable energy for the grid. And as we know, it's a bit like everything else we talk about. We have reached the tipping point where, of course, it's better for the planet, but it's also cheaper, more reliable. It's now a technology that is better in every way. And it's certainly better than the old coal power plants that UK used to use for peak power. We don't need these anymore. We store renewable energy on these big battery banks, and that works brilliantly. So yeah, there are loads of opportunities on the business side, which is why, the racing team ultimately is just the window of that. But there's one thing I'd like to say on the other side. As you can hear, I'm French. I was born in Paris, but I've been in this country for 20 years. And what I really hope is that we can really foster what the UK is so brilliant at, which is high-level engineering and innovation. I've seen that. I've been around the world 15 times, part of what I do. And yet to this day, I don't see anywhere near as much concentration as innovation as you find in the UK, especially in our little world around Cambridge, Milton Keynes, Oxford. It's fantastic. I was friends with Tim Woolmer at YASA. I met him when he was just a spin-off of Oxford University. And now he makes this most amazing electric motors that goes in all the supercars. And there are countless examples like this. And as a kind of, I immigrated in this country 20 years ago. And I find it so frustrating when people who were born in this country just don't see it. There is amazing innovation and talent in this country for R&D. And it needs to be talked about a lot more because there is obviously massive potential in any business that is being disrupted. And the one we're in is one of the largest industries and it is being disrupted. So it's a huge opportunity. So part of racing, I get lucky to see all of these things. But yeah, I think the UK has a massive card to play. It needs to be supported, as we'll talk about maybe later, by the policy that needs to, not necessarily help so much, but at least not hinder. It needs to be supported. And it's not always the case, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Sylvia. I think that's it's a really good point, and perhaps it is sometimes overlooked a little bit. That engineering pedigree in this country, and I mean, we will look at places like Vietnam now. VinFast, an indigenous manufacturer now, kind of like 80% of the vehicles on the roads are VinFast in Vietnam, and their export markets. So it's not just China. There's TOG, the Turkish EV manufacturer, which is doing really well in Turkey, but also got export plans. So it's coming in places which you don't always expect. So it's not just within kind of traditional automotive sectors. There's a lot of competition. UK does have a strong potential, but it's not going to happen by magic. So as you say, there's really need for policy and the right kind of investment, education, etc. So I don't, Neil, this has been a space you've been in a long time as well, kind of this innovation space, but also incubating innovation. I wonder if you had any comments on that, the opportunity for the UK from an industrial perspective.
I think thank you for that, and I concur with most of my colleagues here. I think one of the real challenges that we've got is about energy security as we move from an oil-based, carbon-based economy, which has been heavily invested in over many decades. We'll need to ensure that the electrical generation capability is secure. So there's a big data challenge there in the first instance. And I think there's a great opportunity to diversify the location and create more local ecosystems for generating electricity, storing electricity, grid balancing at a more local level. So I think there's massive opportunity here in that being able to reinforce the grid through battery storage at a local level, being able to create more jobs and skills at a local level, and equally, as a consequence, can enable us to be more secure over our energy sources, have multiplicity of energy sources, and not be dependent, therefore, upon national and international events that we've seen in the last few years, which has spiked prices and caused tremendous harm to lots of points of the economy.
Yeah, totally, incredibly valid point. And yeah, we're seeing that in a lot of different markets. We've got projects in 12 other markets in addition to the UK, so we're kind of seeing that energy security really come to the fore. So hopefully people's feeling quite enthused about the trajectory and there's technology which is in the market now, but also coming down the pipeline. But it's important to acknowledge the challenges. Many challenges do remain. This is not a purely linear kind of trajectory towards full EV adoption, and so we need to be kind of aware and active in addressing a lot of these challenges. And, Abby is a leading fleet operator who's committed to fully electrify your fleet. And you've done a great job at getting electric vehicles on the road, but you are bumping up against some really tough barriers to overcome. I just wondered if you could reflect a little bit on what some of those, the high hanging fruit, if you like, now that you've got to try and get to, and what some of the kind of approaches you're taking to address that.
Yeah, low-hanging fruit is definitely plucked. 70% of the UK does not have access to off-road parking. So whether you live in a block of flats or a terrace and you don't have the ability to have a charging point installed, that does make this harder because you live in a city. Actually, EV charging is pretty good. Most cities, actually. But the moment you get out into rural areas, that range anxiety, that confidence absolutely plummets. So I think consistent charging, reliable charging, interoperable charging, that picture is still not where we'd like it to be. And the fact that so many of the budgets that feed that are held at local authority level, we don't always get, the data of where is this most needed and who's using this kind of technology. So I think charging, add in the cost of public charging, and not just the cost, but the carbon associated with daytime public charging, that is a business case deal breaker. So if we operate one of our medium format vans and we charge it on public network in the day, it's probably not brilliant for emissions and it's definitely not brilliant for price. So we try to charge on private network. We install chargers for our engineers. We've just announced a B2B deal with Sainsbury's, who have, we've got business level pricing. They've got a PPA that covers the power. So that's better, but that is still a kind of work in progress. I think the B2B sort of charging partnerships are also a massive step forward, and that's growing in scale. I think First Bus have been brilliant at it. So the more you can sweat these charging pods and stuff like that, that helps. What would help more is policy confidence. That ZEV mandate debate having opened up. The 7th carbon budget was announced and the government said, yes, we need to do more. And then not even 2 months later, they said, oh, well, actually, maybe we're going to backpedal again on this. We just need confidence and consistency of those policies so that people can get behind it, because there's a lot of people who want to get behind it. And that uncertainty really puts you off. Just think, well, is this going to help me win business after September? What is the next Prime Minister going to do? What is the next Minister of Transport going to do? That really doesn't help with anything, but certainly with transport policy.
Yeah, definitely a recurring theme. We need the stability, you need that regulatory certainty, and there's some voices calling for slowing down of this transition. And the evidence shows, that these technologies are better. That it's ready now. So we feel comfortable just pushing to go full steam ahead. It's the right thing for planet and the economy. Ollie, you've been in this space for a long time. Even before Octopus EV, you've seen the trajectory for passenger cars, and you've seen it kind of from a quite low baseline, a slow incline, and then start to really increase over recent years. Do you see vans following a similar trajectory, or do you see some fundamental differences, or what reflections do you have on how the van market might follow passenger cars?
I think vans are definitely behind cars, and actually You see that in all technology, and actually listening to Van talk just now, it's probably invented in racing. So you see some of that maybe racing or real innovation technology coming to cars. And for me, cars are the norm now. 1 in 4 new cars sold in the UK are EVs, and they are just cars.
Not hybrids, fully electric.
Fully electric, yeah. Not hybrids, not electric. We'll get into that in a minute. But fully electric cars, 1 in 4 cars are fully electric. I think the van technology is further behind, and you've seen that with other technologies. It took a while to get air conditioning in a van. It took a while for electric windows to go into vans. Maybe that's the wrong order: electric windows and air conditioning. So I think technology is slower, and then it's probably, I would say, HGVs are even one step behind that. So you've got kind of cars, then vans, then heavies. But it's coming. It does need innovation. It does need innovation to make that happen. It does need tech to make it work. But I think there are many use cases where actually it can work today. But it doesn't work for every single van driver. So we've got about 2,500, nearly 3,000 Ultras Energy vans on the road. They're the pink ones you see. They're heavily branded with Octopus. They are generally going to people's homes to fit smart meters, solar, and also heat pumps. So most of the time they're fitting something at somebody's home. Now, there's 2 things that we try and do with those vans. A bit to Abby's point, we will look through the team's schedule and we work out when they're going to have space to be able to charge. We can also link that data to our charge point data, so we can know when the charger is free. So we can schedule that in and route them to the right charge point. We're also trialing at the moment them being able to, because we're the energy provider, we can also charge the van whilst it's at someone's house. Now that's generally it depends what they're fitting, of course, and they might have to turn the power off during that period. But a lot of the time they're there, the van's idle, they're doing nothing, they might be there for 3 or 4 hours. Well, it's never going to be a super fast charge, but actually they can probably get enough to get them home or top them up on their journey. And then we can work what that is and we reimburse the customer. We just don't charge them for that bit. And that's one of the advantages of being an energy company, of course. But that technology will become mainstream and all of it will become mainstream. Range will get bigger, etc., etc. There was a point, I can't remember if it was Neil or Sylvain made earlier on about battery chemistry as well. So, or energy density in the battery. That is changing significantly. And you talked about what's happened in the last 10 years. But in simple terms, the weight of the battery is going to come down significantly. So you can get a more energy dense battery or a bigger range battery very quickly in the car. But the true thing really is that people don't drive that far. They generally drive to the shops, to school, to their work. They might do 1 big trip a year. I told this story as we were having coffee, but I've taken my EV to south of France last summer. We're going again this summer. We did 900 miles around the Netherlands at Easter time with 3 kids. And it was totally fine. We queued for 1 charge point in France because I stopped in a place which happened to be busier because of all the traffic coming out of Paris. But it's there today. You don't need to wait. So I think cars are the mainstream. Vans, it's coming, but there needs innovation. And heavies, I think there needs further innovation to get there. But electric is definitely coming at pace.
Yeah, thanks for that overview. Yeah, so some technological innovation is on the way, but as you said, Abby, some of it's coordination, right? Coordination between councils. A lot of it's bureaucratic. It's not just technological. So yeah, we have to keep pushing for the vans to kind of follow the same trajectory, but it is a different usage pattern and probably higher mileage as well. And operationally they're utilised a lot more. So it's a different business model. But and then we talked a bit. Well, you already talked, Neil, about heavy goods vehicles. Starting from a very low baseline. But we look at Netherlands. I think 14% of new trucks in the Netherlands are fully electric. I think in China, certain vehicle segments in the heavy space, over 40% are fully electric. So it's not the technology can function, but in the UK, it's not yet. I wonder if you could reflect on that. What's needed to really get things moving with electric heavy goods vehicles?
Just to bring it a slightly different subject as well, and I'll come back to Brian answer your question. I've had a couple of years working with autonomous vehicles. Now, autonomous vehicles, they take the shortest route time from A to B. They take the shortest kilometer time from A to B, and they need charging. And they always find charging stations which are available. And so that digital platform, it gives them the ability to go and optimize the journey time and the distance they're traveling and the energy therefore they're traveling in is something which we need to bring into mainstream planning in terms of where we site charging stations. Because at the moment we're building charging stations where people operate vans from or trucks from, or where they used to collect their petrol from. or where they collect their supermarket shopping from. And that's not necessarily the most optimum place where the grid is. So it makes it very, very expensive to put charging stations into a number of different, into those locations. So some of the challenges, which I know that are getting addressed in Holland, which is one more reason why there's a slightly higher uptake across Europe, is a national planning structure for charging stations. And it's built upon where should they be in connection with all stakeholders, not only the electricity grids, but the local councils, the operators of the equipment. And I think that what we don't have in the UK is that voice at the moment, which is bringing together all those stakeholders and saying, well, actually build charging stations of this magnitude in this location and then dedicate them to particular types of vehicles. So I think that's an area that we really do need to address over the next few years.
Yeah, definitely hear that. It's different groups who aren't used to speaking to each other, and they need to have a new kind of conversations, almost literally a different language sometimes as well. There's a lot of jargon in whether it's automotive or fleet or utilities, DNOs, etc. So I think I totally agree, and I think we've got a bit of visibility of what's happening in Netherlands, but also other markets who are doing this quite well. And there's a little bit about the cost is still very high for electric trucks. Not everywhere, but places like Germany, they have toll-free trucking for electric trucks made a difference. Obviously, that's not a mechanism in the UK. We don't have tolls, but it's some of the mechanisms to kind of make them a bit more affordable. I'm just conscious of time. We have 5 minutes left. I do have a couple more questions, but I would also love to make this interactive. I think there's a microphone somewhere at the back, but if there's anyone having a question, it'd be great to hear from you. So a microphone for the gentleman in the second row.
Hello, Deepak, South Prime. A question for Sylvian and Oliver. Something I've been wondering for a while is if you're using the battery in the car for vehicle-to-grid charging, does it degrade the life of the battery? Does it change the performance of the battery? Do you have any data on that?
Do you want me to? Yeah, from the trials and pilots we've done, the short version is no, because generally on vehicle to grid, we're very slow charging and very slow up charging. So the biggest, and you probably can answer the question from the battery manufacturer perspective as well, but the biggest impact of a battery is if you're constantly rapid charging it. So it's going very quickly in, very quickly out. But on the trials that we've done on the Leafs and some of the other trials we've got out on the BYDs, the impact is limited. It comes back actually on a very similar, like minimal degradation than you would have, same as any other car. And I think this degradation point is often talked about more generally in the kind of the naysayer press and everything else. What we're seeing is batteries that come back. So we've now got lots of cars, like thousands of cars coming back every month that we put out 3 years ago. The degradation is minimal, and actually a lot less than you would see in an ICE engine. And actually, I don't know why it's even talked about. You never talk about what you see the degradation of an ICE car, a petrol or diesel car after 3 years. I'm getting out of my technical ability, and so I could probably answer it with a more technical answer. But on the pilots we've done, it's minimal on V2G because it's just going so slowly in and out again. So no, it's a short version.
Yeah, nothing much to say. If it's 7 kilowatt, which is a standard in the UK,
yes.
You could do 7 kilowatt either way forever. It's literally so slow. Even on 3-phase at 22 or whatever, it's insignificant. And it's a subject that there is so much misunderstanding actually. So it's for us to do better, communicate better about this. Informally, we are now charging the batteries at 600 kilowatt. For pit stops, fast pit stop, and we do it all the time. And we are now hammering these batteries at 600 kilowatt all day. And by improving the software, we also have minimum degradation at these speeds. So, but I completely understand the question. Many years ago, everybody was talking about this, and we need to debunk that completely because the latest battery technology with the correct software will outlast vehicles. Your suspension will fall off before the battery has heavy degradation. So yeah, for this, no impact at all.
One of the reasons I asked the question is because I'm having to replace the battery in my hybrid BMW after 100,000 miles, and it's going to cost me a small fortune. And so I was just trying to work out whether there's any data on it. What you're saying is that if you're trickle charging, it shouldn't be an issue.
That's because, and that's the challenge, in the hybrid vehicles, the battery is very small. So the C rate, you're basically working that little battery a lot harder than the large battery in an electric car. So that's a lie, basically. There's been a miscommunication from manufacturers. But plug-in hybrids and hybrids have an inherent problem, which is that the electric side of the hybrid is very bad. And we learn and live and learn, right? But yeah, you'll find that large batteries, storage or cars have pretty much no degradation.
Great. Live and learn. Hopefully we all learn as well. It's a good point. Yeah, stuff people need to listen to that point. And one more question, and then I think we're going to... I've got a final question for you, but yeah.
Quick question for Abby. Following on from that, with the degradation, have you seen that as a part of your business case for your vans? So less degradation that you were expecting, or is that pulled in? And are you seeing those vans just lasting a lot longer?
Yeah, to be honest, we look at batteries, but we've been most interested in the other sort of hot topic, which is tyre dust, brake wear, those kind of non-tailpipe emissions. So last week we launched a report on Clean Air Day, which was about what does this do to breathable air, to air quality. Spoiler, it is much better. In the round, we see wear and tear on brakes, on batteries, on everything, roughly on a par with our diesel fleet. Probably the reason for that is we load them to the same payload. So actually this sort of perception that EVs are just heavier and they're causing all these potholes and they're causing more tyre wear, actually maybe that's true in the car market, I'm not sure. But in the van market, if your payload's equal, then the impact is the same. Overall though, service and maintenance costs are much, much lower. So while I don't think there's necessarily an increase in life, it is a much cheaper sort of cycle for us.
Yeah, fascinating. Another one of those myths busted there as well around, I remember I used to work for a clean air campaign and talked a lot about the tyre particulate matter from tyre wear, far, far worse with electric vehicles. And you see these stories of car parks in risk of collapsing with electric vehicles and all this kind of thing. So hopefully they're in the dust as well as that point around hybrids as well. So yeah, a couple of minutes left. I'd like to close with a question to you all. If maybe we'll start with you, Ollie, just so we'll do it in order. So we've got a new Prime Minister. I'm not sure if they're fully confirmed yet, but one impending, and hopefully there's a bit of stability there as well. And talk about stability and regulation, what's the stability and leadership? What and this is to all of you, what one thing would you like to see them enact during their term in office, which is going to really help the UK's transition to a clean and equitable transport system?
I was going to answer this two ways, actually. I think the first point, I made it earlier on, but is clarity on that zero-emission vehicle mandate. And actually, there's so much confusion in the press and in the public that care around actually the zero-emission vehicle is about the sale of cars, not the production of cars. And actually, there are more jobs in the UK in the production of, I don't think there's more. There are a lot of jobs in the UK in production of cars and a lot of jobs in the sale of cars, but they are two different things. So my plea to the Prime Minister, or pending Prime Minister in waiting, let's say, would be about getting certainty. If we get certainty, everyone can get behind that. Business and the general public would be my one ask, would be certainty. My second more general point would just be, these are just cars. These are just vans. This big scare point. So by 2030, I think we just talk about them as cars or vans, whatever they say. Maybe they are just vehicles. There's not this big scare thing around them. So by 2030, they're just part of the normal vernacular of these are cars or vehicles that we use to get around.
Great. Thanks, Ollie. Sylvia?
Yeah. A short answer for me is stability, of course, but it's more just the best technology must win. So ultimately, as much as we need government for many, many aspects of our lives, we really don't need it for this. So I was quoted about 10 years ago saying the goal of Formally is to advance this technology so quickly that we don't need incentives. 10 years ago, all we talked about was incentives. And I was like, I cannot wait until the day we don't talk about incentives. The cars are just better in every single aspect. We are now getting there. Now we need to look at vans and all these things, but it will be the same. So for me, every time we mess with tax, the 3p amount tax for EVs, I still don't really understand. This is just a complete waste of time because it's just slowing down the country. When ultimately, anyone who understands a little bit about technology will understand that an electric motor is a lot better suited to move a vehicle around. And now we've got good batteries, we're done. So anytime we try to mess with this, we just slow down the business, the country, the purchasing power, and a knock-on effect. And that frustrates me highly. So I would be very interested in a world where there's pretty much very little incentives, at least for passenger cars. But there should be no messing around either, right?
Yeah.
May the best technology win.
All right.
And I am very, very confident that very, very shortly it will be a clear answer.
Take the stabilizers off, let them compete with each other, and the market decide. Neil.
And we've all talked about the stability and certainty, and I absolutely agree with that. What I would just add into that is that we need a national plan for the build out of charging stations at a depot level. We need to be in a position over the next 5 years to identify those so that we can then start to cost those and give certainty to the supply chains. And that certainty to the supply chains will start to then give certainty to investors to invest in the innovators who can bring forward the technologies to be delivered into those depots.
Yeah. Great, Neil. Yeah. So driving take up as well as investment and industry as well. Yeah. Final word, Abby?
Last word of the day. All of the above, but I will add that net zero has become a political hot potato. And actually, it really struck me that ULEZ, the success is measured in the reduced cost on the NHS. London is no longer the most polluted city in the UK. Manchester has that accolade today. So actually kind of just shifting the dialogue from this is a carbon crazy, that kind of stuff into this is just better. It's better technologically. It's better for breathing quality. It is just the way forward. Don't upgrade your hybrid. Get an EV. Speak to Ollie.
Great.
Yeah, my team are outside.
Well, mate, I've seen two as well. I need to replace my.
I think I've sold 2 EVs so
my
far.
stolen Nissan Leaf.
Three. Yeah, the van was still on.
Well, thank you all very much for your attention and the questions as well. It's been absolutely fascinating. I've really enjoyed that as well. Learned a lot today as well. So thank you to all for all sharing your insight, being so candid. And I hope everybody in the audience has a great rest of the conference. Thank you.